I now would like to introduce our next speakers and hand over to Professor Kenneth Amaeshi. Today we have with us Sola Mahoney, the Non-Executive Director of Guaranty Trust Bank, Gambia, based in the Gambia. He will not be representing the bank. He'll be sharing more about his own personal experiences on the African continent. We also have Dr. Joy Kiiru, the Senior Lecturer at University of Nairobi, School of Economics. We also have Stephen Kehinde Medase, a Research Associate from the College of Business and Economics from the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. And we also have Yinusa Oyekunle, the Assistant Lecturer at the Department of Adult Education, University of Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'll hand over again to Professor Kenneth Amaeshi.
Okay, fine. So maybe we can just ask them to introduce themselves like a minute. So Sola, do you want to introduce yourself briefly to the audience? Oh, hello, Sola. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for this invitation. My name is Sola Mahoney. I am a Gambian based in the Gambia. I started my working career as a civil servant, focusing on economic policy management, did that for some 10 to 15 years, and then moved into international banking and spent, I suppose, the rest of my working life there, retired some sort of 5-6 years ago, and have since been still engaged in banking because I sit on the board of one of the largest commercial banks here in the Gambia. But in addition to that, what excites me about this session is that I also spend a fair amount of time involved with startups. And perhaps one of my qualifications is that I've put and lost a fair amount of money being engaged in startups, often as an investor. And even as we speak, I'm sitting on the board of a couple of startups. So I feel that in terms of the entrepreneurial space, my engagement, and why I want to speak, by the way, in my individual capacities, because I don't just have the hat of a banker on. I also have the hat of an investor in startups and one who sits on the board of some startups. So I think that's probably enough for you, Kenneth, because I know you don't, that's who I am.
So maybe I go to Inusa.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It feels great to be here. I am Yinusa Oyekunle from the Department of Adult Education, University of Lagos, Nigeria. And basically, my research has been on entrepreneurship education and how to best deliver entrepreneurship education in our institutions in Nigeria, Africa as a whole, in a way to solving the challenge of unemployment, creation of jobs, and build sustainable businesses, and in turn facilitate economic independence of our young adults, of our graduates, in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Stephen?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to join this growing community to share knowledge. I'm Stephen Kehinde Medase. Currently in Germany. I reside in Germany though, but I'm affiliated to the University of Johannesburg. My research focus, the research areas is mostly connected to innovation and entrepreneurship. Not basically looking at Africa alone, but I tend to extend my tentacles to other regions to have something comparative to bring up about the development paradigm of innovation and entrepreneur in sub-Saharan Africa and Africa as a whole. And that I will share, at least basically looking at my previous publications and ongoing projects. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So do you prefer Stephen or Kehinde? Which one?
Kehinde.
Kehinde. Okay. I need to be aware of that. So let me go back to Sola. I think that's the panel for now. I mean, when Joy comes in, please let me know, Farida. Sola, when you think about entrepreneurship and your engagement with it, what comes to mind? I mean, how do you see entrepreneurship generally, and what informs that thinking?
I have to say that when I think of entrepreneurship, Kenneth, I come from a slightly different perspective, possibly from you. I listened to the very engaging presentation you gave, where you divide I think the types of entrepreneurs we have in Africa, starting off with survivalists and so forth. When I think of entrepreneurship, certainly in Africa, one of the first things that seems to come to my mind is that in this, where we are facing, well, people like to, we used to call it a youth dividend, but I think this is now turning out to be a bit of a youth challenge. It seems to me it's entrepreneurship that's going to help us address that issue. And so for me, hats off to entrepreneurs. Africa, as I've said before, is not for sissies. Entrepreneurship, as we know, is a space in which there are many more failures than there are successes. And so when I think of entrepreneurship, I'm thinking, my hat goes off to those survivalists. And I am all for, I love what you're talking about, the Afro-capitalism. A lot of those ideas resonate with me deeply in my soul. But at the end of the day, I think we are in an Africa where we need to be able to provide opportunities. And so hats off to the entrepreneurs around this table and those who are doing whatever needs to be done to assist Africans become successful entrepreneurs. Because at the end of the day, bottom of the line, you got to put food on the table. So it is very much a survivalist game for me. That's the kind of thing that comes to mind, top of the mind. Let me just put that out on the table for you, Prof.
Yes, before I go back to Joy to introduce herself, but let me stay with you on this a bit. So, so if the entrepreneur is the person, the kind of person who creates values the way you've articulated it, and there is that kind of survivalist agenda around it, how then do you think, how would that sort of entrepreneurship help Africa?
I hear you. A very valid question, because at the end of the day, what you're really asking me is how do we make sure that we have the right kind of entrepreneurship? And no doubt about it, best case scenario, exactly as you've outlined, that's what we would love to have. But I think reality dictates that, well, let's get a few things sorted out first. Let's deal with survival. And I hate to sound melodramatic about it, but that's your term, survivalist. And I think that is really a very real issue. And if you look at the statistics in terms of unemployment, in terms of the number of university grads that we are producing, in terms of the immediate employment opportunities, absolutely right. We'd love everybody to be focused on climate change and sustainable projects and so forth. I think we will get there, but I think the first things first, let's make sure that we have businesses that can generate value and that can feed the population and make sure that we survive, and we will gradually get there. That would be my hope, and I would put that responsibility, frankly, and again, slightly optimistic, on governments. It's governments who are responsible for saying, okay, look, we want you in this area rather than that area, and as a result of which we will provide you with incentives or subsidies in order for that to happen. But I don't think I want to put it on I don't want to put that responsibility on the shoulders of the entrepreneurs who, after all, are already investing so much in order to make things happen. So that would
okay, fantastic. I mean, I think kind of setting us up for a very interesting conversation. Joy, do you want to introduce yourself briefly before carry on?
Thank you very much. I'm Joy Kiiru. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. I teach at the University of Nairobi, the Department of Economics. I'm a senior lecturer there. I'm also affiliated with Abdulatif Jamil Poverty Action Lab, that is JPAL. This is a research hub which is based at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. Mainly, I do research on issues of employment and economic empowerment for youth and other marginalized groups, including women. I think the rest we shall get to know each other as we proceed. Thank you.
So Farida, I don't know why you decided to have the academics ganged up against Shola here, but I hope you'll be able to survive that one.
Oh, absolutely. We're loving it right now.
So let me go to Kehinde. I know he's in Germany and he's been doing some, I guess you'd be also looking at German entrepreneurs, would that be correct? And also the German economic system. And I wanted to see if there are lessons to be learned, so how do German entrepreneurs behave? What do they think about? And how would they either resemble or differ from the kind of entrepreneurs Shola sees in Africa?
Significantly, we have this divergence. However, what is actually more important is the context. Look at entrepreneur or entrepreneurship in Africa, and what is it actually addressing, and what, so you pay significant attention mostly to context. And if you are moving from the entrepreneurial, pattern to the innovative entrepreneurial pattern, then what becomes more important is the case of indigenous innovation. But when you come to Germany, entrepreneur is first, you look at, it's not just about context. It's not just about the local economy, but it goes beyond, what is obtained in Germany to bring it in the international community. If you look at that, there is a man who is a typical German called Hermann Simon. Now, Hermann Simon, he's been documenting the number of entrepreneurs in Germany and the significant contribution to employment and growth. And his findings, is that, okay, entrepreneurs contribute significantly to the growth of Germany in terms of economy and at the same time, job. However, these entrepreneurs are located in hidden areas in Germany. So you really do not see them. You really do not know how they actually go about the way they produce, output, and how they contribute significantly to the economy. So our attention is basically leaning to the larger firms to think, okay, these smaller firms are not making significant contribution. And that is actually the lesson in which, we should learn as Africa, from Germany, that, okay, we have to begin to identify and recognize these small businesses and help them to contribute significantly. And if I will come to the case of survival, in which you also mentioned, that is actually a typical thing about entrepreneur or entrepreneurship in Africa. And if you look at sub-Saharan Africa as a whole. But what is even more fundamental is the fact that the institutional dimension is also not helpful when we talk about, the emergence and the growth of entrepreneurs in Africa. If you look at the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, you have huge documentation of, the potentiality of Africa, developing, core entrepreneurs to challenge the global economy or the global market players. But the fact remains that institutions, are basic impediment to the growth of entrepreneurial, pattern in Africa. And that is exactly what we should address. And that is exactly what actually distinguishes, entrepreneur emergence from that of Germany.
Yeah, let me hold you that a bit. When you say institutions, right? I mean, for the interest of audience here. So do you want to unpack that a bit so people can also relate to what exactly you mean by institution?
Yes, I look at when I talk about institutions, I basically lean towards political institutions and financial institutions. These are really fundamental to the growth of entrepreneurs. And I will first go to financial institutions. And I'm glad Sola is here as a banker. Institutions, when it comes to finance, plays a fundamental role in innovation and entrepreneurship. And you have scholars have documented how significant finance is to innovation and entrepreneurs. But the structure of finance in Africa is far and way better than even in developed countries. When you look at financial structure in Africa, we have the most robust financial system. However, one thing we do not recognize is, I have three basic concepts to lean to qualify this. The first is actually acknowledging the fact that we have this potential, accepting that we have this potential, and addressing the situations around these that we have this potential. So what it means is, we should not make financial institutions to just benefit, by saying, okay, you deposit, you get, returns. But I think financial institutions should go further in amplifying the growth and the emergence of entrepreneurs. And I think this GT, Guaranty Trust Bank, is making a substantial contribution to this. And if I may go to political institutions is also another core aspect, and that is where the interaction of political and financial institutions meets. Now, you cannot actually separate these. Political institution in Africa is a major problem. Go, for example, to Central Africa, where you have, civil unrest. You have other African countries where you have this political fragmentation. Now, this political fragmentation can never in any way support the emergence of entrepreneurs or innovation. And you have scholars also documenting the fact that institutions do matter for entrepreneur, for innovation. So how do we make these institutions, or both financial and political institutions, robust and supportive to the emergence and the growth of entrepreneur, is to ensure that there is a significant interaction between these two fundamental aspects of institution in order for entrepreneurs to grow.
Okay, fantastic. That's a very good synopsis of that. I think I like it. But the point also, which is worth exploring, is, when you say financial institutions, and I guess you're looking at the banks and all the other players in that space, but the banks are also fundamentally entrepreneurs, right? So a Sola, for example, running a bank is running as an entrepreneur, but you're asking him to do something else. But it's also the nature of risks. How do you fund and support these SMEs and so on and so forth? So in Nigeria, for example, the central bank has been pushing the banks to fund the SMEs, even up to the point now they're beginning to create more like an equity structure for them to participate. So the banks initially found it easier to keep that money with the central bank and do other things. And they didn't want to invest because of all the associated risks and transaction costs. But again, it's a question that challenges the sort of entrepreneurs we want to see. So even if you're saying the financial guys should do so, then we are also asking, we are making a demand of some entrepreneurship or a certain type of entrepreneurship from them. And I'll come back to Sola at some point. But let me go to Yinusa now and ask the question about, you're in education, and there is this problem, challenge in terms of, are entrepreneurs made or born, right? In that sense, the same way you also apply to leaders. Are leaders born or made? Do we create them? So through your education, do you create entrepreneurs, or do you think entrepreneurs come naturally?
Thank you, Kenneth, for that question. It's a great one. I agree totally that entrepreneurs are created. They are not born. And how do I mean? In 2017, I conducted a research on employability skills and programs to enhance graduate to transition to the labor market, in which I got a small fund from DAAD to present this research in University of Wurzburg, and which I did. And we look at a comparative study in Germany and in Nigeria. We have several programs that could enhance these employability skills in students. However, these employability programs are not being harnessed, are not being explored by our students. We found a challenge there. However, going further, we discovered that why these skills are very important, there is need for entrepreneurship skills as well. Now, this boils down to our institution on how to develop entrepreneurial mindset of students to become job creators rather than job seekers. Now, the institutions have a major role to play in developing great entrepreneurs, because the system is there for us. It is just to connect, to network, and to build a sustainable structure in form of ecosystem that will promote these, that will build up, develop these entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs. So what am I saying is that when the institutions as an ecosystem recognize and accept entrepreneurship as a viable way to develop economic, then the structures and institutions can welcome it as a welcome development to begin to create partnerships, network with players in the industries, with players in the government agencies, and build a synergy to create that platform for entrepreneurs to survive, to develop. Now, what we do in University of Lagos, we have Entrepreneurship and Skill Development Center, led by Director Dr. Sunday Adebisi, under the leadership of Professor Oluwatoyin Ogudepe. Now, these icons recognize the importance of entrepreneurship education, entrepreneurship in our system. And what they do is to partner with Bank of Industry, for instance, Central Bank of Nigeria, and NUC, that's the National University Commission, to see how they can form partnership and develop a robust curriculum to teach, to educate, and ingrain in these student entrepreneurship skills, because we know that they are not born, they are created. When these skills are effectively and efficiently ingrained in these students, they can develop competencies, entrepreneurial characteristics. Their entrepreneurial mindset will be awakened to think about creating ideas that can be sustainable for the development of Africa. Let me rest my case there.
Fine. I mean, I like your point about the fact that entrepreneurs are created. Then the question here for me would be, are the universities better placed to create these entrepreneurs? So if we have academics, we are accused of being theoretical, kind of ivory tower thinking, and so on and so forth. Do you think that the universities are the best places to train or create these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think university is the best place to create these entrepreneurs. And the reason being is that, like I said earlier, the universities have the structures, they have the system. It's just that they haven't harnessed it yet. Majority of them have not recognized the importance of the structures they have. First, they need to accept that entrepreneurship is the way to develop our economy. Now, when they accept it, they can create an ecosystem. Now, why I said they have the structure is that, take for instance, in University of Lagos. University of Lagos Nigeria has been able to recognize this. And what they do is to begin to network with industries, with business experts, to come into the system, build structures, co-working space, a hub, to bring our students together, form a team, those that have idea, bring their idea on board, go through mentorship program, and see how their ideas can transform to sustainable and scalable business. The structure is there. We have been creating that awareness, that sensitization, and that training. However, what the challenge is, why University of Lagos recognize this importance of entrepreneurship education, most institutions have not been able to see the importance. And what University of Lagos is partnering with other universities in Nigeria to make sure that their entrepreneurs, their directors are trained, are properly trained in form of a workshop to see the need for these entrepreneurs to be developed. When they see the need, they can go back to their institution and develop factpreneurs. We call them facultypreneurs. That's the faculty members that can instill, that can raise the consciousness, like the Sola mentioned, the African consciousness. So they can create this consciousness in these students to develop their mindset and begin to think entrepreneurially. By that, they will come out with businesses that will be sustainable in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's see if Joy shares the same enthusiasm with Yinusa here. So Joy, how is it in Kenya? And what do you think universities can do or are doing in terms of producing entrepreneurs that are fit for society?
Thank you very much. I know when we say that entrepreneurs are created, our policymakers tend to take that extremely literally, and they want to provide all sorts of funds and turn everybody into entrepreneur. I believe that is not what my brother is trying to imply here, but rather serious entrepreneurs are the ones that go out there to solve a problem, not to survive because there's nothing else they can do. Serious entrepreneurs are not entrepreneurs who are originating from a situation of desperation. Look, I have nothing to eat, so what do? I start selling vegetables here. I start selling water there. I start selling, No, that's not the kind of entrepreneurship we're talking about. Rather, entrepreneurship is about seeing that there is a social problem. For example, there's a water issue. You remember, like, for example, how we got from tap water to bottled water, for example. It started when, especially in our case, whereby tap water was proved beyond reasonable doubt that it was not good water, that it was not clean water. And therefore, people started drinking bottled water. And ever since then, this culture has never left us. And nobody talks about tap water not being clean or not clean, but still many people don't drink that. So you look at the issue of tap water, it's very expensive. What is the solution to make clean water safe? Maybe you may want to start with water cleaning solutions for the house, whereby people can turn their water from not so safe, they believe it's not safe, to very safe water, using a solution, maybe some kind of a filter or something, or having a refilling plant that gives water, that gives people clean water, but at very affordable rates. I mean, I'm talking about identifying a problem and coming up with a solution that you can commercialize. That's how entrepreneurship is supposed to work. You look at Africa, maybe like all the mangoes ripen at the same time, and there's a problem that they are rotting or something like that. You come up with a solution that you can add value by drying or by making juices, or at least some kind of value addition, but extend the shelf life. And then you commercialize that. That is entrepreneurship that you're talking about. Are universities doing that? Now to your question. Are we doing that? We need to reform our curriculum. You see, at the university, we try to, everybody with a degree, they tend to think that they are making a CV and circulate for employment. They never think that they are going to be the ones receiving CVs to employ people. So in other words, we must reform our curriculum and be able to help our students identify socio-economic problems out there that they can come up with solutions for and commercialize and solve that. You look around, maybe like transportation is an issue, for example. Maybe there's an issue with, maybe if transportation is an issue, for example, what can you do to make it safer and quicker and easier to manage? Maybe you have a digital solution to make paying for transportation and not getting, this, and the idea when you're trusting people to have your money, when people pay through paying somebody the money and you are a business person, maybe you're going to be losing in between. You may come up with a solution that allows people to pay for their transportation issues without directly exchanging hands with the person who is managing that, but the money goes to a kitty. Thereby it helps owners of such transportation remove issues of maybe like issues of an accountability and software accountability issues, for example. Such kind of keen eye on identifying problems that they can create solutions that they can commercialize. Do we do that? It's not been the culture of the university to do that. And I think it's because of the curriculum. Our curriculum lacks a serious link between the academy and the practice and the industry. We need to make curriculums that, if I'm an economist, right? You want to make people be keen-eyed. Like, for example, what can an economist do other than look for a job at the Kenya Bureau of Statistics, or look for a job at the World Bank, or look for a job in any of these research centers? What can they do? For example, they want to identify problems that people don't understand much, like the issue of you want to look at issues of stereotypes, gender norms, social norms, and how they impact on society. And you want to come with a strong case of, if we can understand how these stereotypes are formed, how we can deal with them, we can be able to deal with the issue of cohesion and national acceptance, for example. And to come up with a strong case, and you want to look, and funding is there for such kind of, you want to look at who funds this kind of work. And when you get the funding, how do you manage this? Do you start a research center, or do you become an independent consultant? Or how do you, like, identifying issues that society needs solutions for? Identifying economic, like, for example, look at debt, for example, and borrowing, and you want to find out, why is it that we are incurring so much debt? Go out of your way, create a compelling case of why this is happening, how it can be managed. Go out of your way and just look at this data and analyze where are the weaknesses coming in, and come up with a case and come up with a platform to show really this is what is happening. People are looking for such things who can help us resolve issues. Okay. So that is what we need to do as a
Okay,
university.
Let's hear what shall I have my answer?
I do beg your pardon, sorry about this, but I just had to jump in.
It's all right.
I'm concerned about the idea that real entrepreneurship is the stuff that, you know, all the intelligent people do. They've been trained, they've done this, they look at the society and they decide this is what works. I want to say publicly that from my point of view, I doff my hat to that lady who hasn't been, who wakes up in the morning, knows that she's got to feed her kids, finds out that these guys need vegetables. I can buy vegetables from this place and take them and sell them at a profit. I doff my hat to those people. That is looking towards the bottom of the pyramid. And I think that particular style of entrepreneurship, yes, it's basic, yes, it's survivalist, but I think that is what is going to be the fundamental engine. And no disrespect to intellectuals, academics, because I think you guys are on the right path. That is what we need to aspire to. But let's not forget that these other guys, and you know, because you know that they're not possibly on this webinar. People who are looking to survive, and you know, I assume that most of us are not survivalists, luckily. But those are important people, and they are important cogs in the ecosystem, if I could mix metaphors, the ecosystem, the machinery that drives that particular ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So, sorry, I had to put that plug in because I don't want us to lose sight of that person selling vegetables, because they do play an important role. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I was even trying to come back to you on that, building on what Joy has said, because I was thinking about Bill Gates, for example. I was thinking about Steve Jobs. I don't think these guys were produced by the university, right? Some of them were even dropout. Dangote, the richest man in Africa, I never hear him talk about his academic background. Maybe he's a graduate, I don't know, right? So, and I kind of challenge you and say, well, point out to us whether you're Inusa or Joy, you must have a large database of successful entrepreneurs who have come to your programs, right? In that sense, can you tell us about them, really?
Just a recap on that. When we talk about this, I'm talking about my dream Africa, not the Africa of today. My dream Africa is not the Africa of we want to sustain 12 people sustain their poverty by selling vegetables or doing that. My dream Africa is an Africa whereby people go into entrepreneurship because they think they can live above the poverty line and they can earn a living and they've got the talent of what it takes. Remember, entrepreneurs are partly created and are partly born. People have been called, if I may use the word calling, for better of a better expression, people have been called to different things, internally called. Some of them have been called to be entrepreneurs, whatever that really means. But that is what I mean, like the inborn thing, and then the created thing whereby you learn. So my dream Africa is an Africa whereby people go into entrepreneurship because they believe that is really what they want to do, not because they've been forced by circumstances. That's my dream Africa. Okay. We don't want an Africa of, yes.
No, it's all right.
What I wanted to say. So what was your actual question before I get
No, you already answered it in a way, yeah. So but before I come to Yinusa, let me go to Kehinde, because he was talking about the political system, political institutions. And my take is that entrepreneurship is, yes, as much as it's a vocation or a calling, as Joy has put it, and also Yinusa said it's created. Yeah, I agree, but there's a blend between the creation and the other bit. But I would argue, contrary to Shola's position, that it's the society that takes the first risk and not necessarily the entrepreneur. Because it's this government or political institution, as he said, that says this is a limited corporation, limited, a limited corporation. So government or the political institution has already taken that risk or has de-risked the entrepreneurial activity. So that what the entrepreneur is doing is not necessary for the benefit of the entrepreneur alone, but there's an entrepreneurship that is linked to societal interest. And I would think that even in the German system, that is kind of entrenched, so that the entrepreneur is there knowing that the political system has taken the first risk to enable the entrepreneur to flourish. How do you see that? And even also in the German system, I know also that the investors, the owners, and the kind of the employers or employees, they have ways of sharing in the benefit of what is produced, because there is that risk of entrepreneurial heroism where we say, oh, the entrepreneur is the hero here, he creates, but the entrepreneur would need other people, other resources, assets to help refine his or her ideas. How does it play out in Germany?
Thanks, Kenneth, for this wonderful question. Before I go into the specificity of this question, I would like to just address a few comments made by our panelists, and that's basically links me to the core of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial emergence. If you look at Steve Jobs, you look at Bill Gates, you look at these people, they'll be able to tell you that, okay, this is where I started. Now, they give you, even some of them will be able to share with you, pictures of where they actually started from and where they are currently. Now, the problem with Africa is basically that I think there is this misconception about, how people made it. And most African entrepreneurs are not able to share, the true story of their success. And that is impacting on a lot of people, especially, people in the universities, people in higher institutions. For example, you say, okay, you wake up one morning and someone says, oh, I'm rich. And the person tells you, I am an entrepreneur. And this is, this is the stand I come to be. This is what this is my impact in the society. But the core thing is, how did you begin? Now, can you share how you actually started with these people? Now, these people in the university and the people out there, as mentioned by Sola, they don't know exactly how you started, but knowing exactly how you started is actually a good step for them to live. And that is where context now takes place, as you mentioned, that the environment, we have to create a very congenial, breathing space for people to grow, for emergence of entrepreneur. And that takes me to the case of Germany. As you know, there is a distinction between necessity and opportunity entrepreneur. Now, in Africa, it's basically necessity. It's actually necessary. If I don't do it, I won't survive. So I do it in order for me to survive. Take, for instance, someone who is in maybe one of the universities. Now, in order for you to be able to run through your institution or your academics, you have to say, okay, I want to open a barbing store where I barb hairs, in order to complement what I do, how to pay my tuition, how to pay my living. Now, that is fundamental. Now, the case of Germany, it is not necessity driven. At times it could be opportunity driven because I see opportunity in these. Some is not basically, it is opportunity driven. It's just that I want to start. So, and you see the environment very congenial for them to start because the government, gives them that platform to be able to contribute substantially and to grow substantially. But in Africa, generally, we don't have that particular, lever to live. Just as Yinusa said, talking about the university being the growing zone of entrepreneur. I don't think we have that yet. You even confirmed that because you look at most of our entrepreneurs, look at their academic background. Did they really emerge from these universities? Did they really emerge from these areas? But the people who are really emerging, from this entrepreneurial trajectory are basically people out there in the community, who studies, who look and say, okay, yes, I follow this pattern, I follow this trajectory. What can I extract? What can I get from this? And that's where the value extraction plays a role. And the value extraction from this point is taken into perspective with the HC, our population. Population in Africa should be an advantage. Just as we have the case of China, leveraging population growth, to chart a course, a developmental course. But we are not actually leveraging that because our demographic, if you look at studies, for example, the International Labour Organization, projects that demographic should be one of the factors that should drive, development in a country. But we don't really have that yet. So in Germany, the system is so conducive. The political atmosphere is so conducive. And that allows, people who think that, okay, I'm contributing to the necessity of things, or I'm contributing to the opportunity-driven issue, then I'm able to stand on the ground to contribute to the society.
Okay, fantastic. I think I like that idea, and I like how you ended in terms of the policy making, the political space. And I'm going back to Yinusa here. You train entrepreneurs. Sometimes, and most of the time, we tend to limit the discussion about entrepreneurship to say the private sector and people who make things we buy and sell, right? What about political entrepreneurship? So if you want to create a country like the one Kehinde has described in Germany, where the politicians and government are providing an enabling environment, that's a form of entrepreneurship. So how, Yinusa, do you train or use your opportunity to also help people in policymaking think about what they do as a form of entrepreneurship? Because it's about entrepreneurship that will help society, broadly speaking, from a political perspective. Mariana Mazzucato at the UCL has also talking about the entrepreneurial state, right? So government has an entrepreneurial space. How does that come into your education at the university?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Say, I totally agree and support the fact that the players in the political realm, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, players in the political realm should support wholeheartedly entrepreneurship. Now, what we do in University of Lagos, because I usually make reference to that because we can see the platform is there and the need for us to project it is there. At the last convocation, all the topics, the theme of our discussion was centered towards promoting entrepreneurship. Now, we invited a governor from the northern part, Governor Zulum. And this governor, we know that this person is a key player in the political realm. Now, what we want him to do is to go back there and go and project the need for people in the political space to sponsor, to support entrepreneurship development in our universities. Now, what they can do, I categorize them as under government agencies, because we know that new breeds of entrepreneur needs to come. We are not talking about survivalists, because as you said, Kenneth, you said they form 60%, if not above that, of our entrepreneurs in Africa. We don't want survivalists. We want entrepreneurs that will come out of empathy, emotional intelligence, and see the need to solve real problems in this society. Now,
well, can the politicians themselves be these entrepreneurs, but using their political offices to shape society? So I'm trying to move entrepreneurship into the space of policy making as opposed to, say, entrepreneurship for buying and selling, if you see my point.
Yeah, they can come into the space, and that is by supporting policy development that will enhance entrepreneurial development in the
is that included in your curriculum? So when you are speaking to the student in political science,
yeah,
or somebody in public administration, or who has aspiration to become a politician, so is your entrepreneurship education tailored also to support that kind of person think about his or her role in the political space as a form of entrepreneurship?
Now is a new thing now that we begin to resonate with. What we are saying now is it has not focused on that. But now there is the need for it to focus on the aspect of the people going into politics to support entrepreneurship, to come into entrepreneurship and create that platform for people to be employed, for jobs to be created, and to grow business exponentially. That's the new thing about the curriculum now. And that is why we are engaging people from the government agencies to see the need to revamp the curriculum, to to integrate every aspect of the players.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So let me ask the final question to Sola before I hand over to Farid as you continue. So for having listened and to academics and also based on your reflection, how do you see this, what I'm trying to call here, an expanded view of entrepreneurship, which goes beyond just the man on the street or the survivalist to include others? How would you see that play out in practice?
Excellent point. In practice, I guess, is the operative word. Because I hope I've aligned myself publicly to the fact that I love the spirit. I love what that's all about in terms of what we need to do. I've seen comments from Howard saying, look, it's all about social cohesion. How do we build an environment through entrepreneurship that's going to be sustainable? And I have to say that I think we hopefully will get there over time. I like the idea of the role that the universities will play in terms of changing their curriculum so that there's an element of entrepreneurialism, entrepreneurship built into the curriculum, because right now, typically you go to university, you're thinking about getting employed when you get out. But I really do, Kenneth, think that in terms of the way forward, I think we have to be all embracing in terms of the different types of entrepreneurship. I also feel that it is governments, and I say that with a bit of a sigh, because I'm not sure we have great confidence in governments, but it is governments that need to be playing that role. They are all about the enabling environment. They are all about they're the ones that need to provide the incentive. They are all about the ones that need to provide the incentives or the disincentives to push us in different directions, so that if you are getting into a business that is providing social cohesion or is sustainable, then there needs to be some incentive for you. So that's why I look to, and I say that, as I say, not with a great amount of confidence, because so far in Africa, we haven't had many governments who are responding responsibly to those kinds of situations. But I think that's the only way we've got to go. And in the meantime, yes, I continue to say that, yeah, look, a lot of this, I love where we're going. I heard Joy talking about the dream of Africa that she has. Absolutely fine, lovely. But guess what, guys? In terms of where we are, check the population dynamics, check the rate of youth unemployment. We need to figure out how to feed people. Otherwise, we won't even have a chance to have these webinars. There will be, I won't say blood on the streets, but there will be social chaos rather than cohesion. So I think for me, that is the message, to the extent that I have a message at all. But that's where I leave it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And hopefully some of the people on this webinar and that will be here tomorrow will also tackle some of these big problems you highlighted. And instead of seeing them mainly as problems as inhibitors, they can also turn to be opportunities to be explored, and which will fit in well with what Kehinde has talked about in terms of opportunity-driven entrepreneurship in itself. And Yinusa has talked about education, and education in this case would inform both those interested in the commercial side of things and those in the public side, and even extended to the NGOs, because the NGOs also need to be entrepreneurial in what they do. And Joy talked about the Africa we want to see. So hopefully, this is the start of the conversation, where while we recognize where Sola is in terms of the everyday things and the practical bit, nothing stops us from also being aspirational and imaginary in how we move forward. And I think, Farida, that's the kind of word you want to achieve, I suspect. So I hate to go, but I have to stop now and hand over to Farida. It's been an interesting conversation with you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Kenneth Amaeshi. Professor Kenneth Amaeshi will be joining us for the final day when we'll be announcing our winners. Thank you. I would like to keep our panelists here for a moment to have a few more questions for you. Take care. So we have some questions from the floor. I believe, Amos, thank you for your question. I believe our panelists have addressed that. We also have a question here from Mele. And one of the challenges faced by startups in Africa is access to financial resources, especially by the youth. How could the business ground be leveled for the youth to flourish? Would like to take this question. Might direct it to you, Sola.
Yeah, yes, I suppose it does sort of fall in my lap. Again, I have to start off with what the reality is. When you go to a bank or any financial institution that's lending, What they're interested in doing is lending you money so that, one, you get paid back. Hopefully you grow and they get more business out of the business that you are creating. That's essentially what a banker is thinking about. That's what the shareholders who have invested money in that bank or in that lending institution are all about. That's what they want to focus on. I think what we're finding is that increasingly governments and central banks are beginning to put in incentives and disincentives. I think Yinusa mentioned in the Gambia that in Nigeria, the central bank is now saying, well, look, you must lend more. It seems to me that is perhaps the way to go. It's got to come from the policymakers. You will not typically find a bank that says, look, I've got to lend to the youth. Although what you will find is that banks look and say, look, it's important that I'm active with young people and the youth because these are the future for tomorrow. So I think it's a bit of both. I think banks will invariably operate in a way that's kind of enlightened self-interest. There is, of course, that corporate social responsibility window that every bank has. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about government doing what they are supposed to do as providing the enabling environment, possibly directly or through the central bank to begin to reorient funding to the youth, but making sure that youth are given the support to ensure that they have successful enterprises that can indeed pay back to whoever's lending them the money. I'm not sure if that helps with the discussion, the point that has been raised.
Absolutely, thank you. Now we have 2 more minutes left of this session before we give ourselves a 5-minute 5-minute break for drinks and so on. We'll return for our next discussion on ICT. Everyone here is aware that we are having a hackathon that's taking place. We have an international group of students who are coming together, developing solutions, focusing on sustainable development in Africa. So I would like our panelists today, what would you recommend, or what advice do you have for our students, for our participants who are developing a business idea based on economy and employment? What do you feel that people need to focus on right now?
Okay, I would like to quickly chip in something on that. One thing I've discovered in my line of research and engagement with students is that their fear for failure is greater than their passion for success. They need to remove that fear of failure in order to succeed. They should be moved by the passion to contribute to solve real problems in the society. And that is why the institutions like academic institutions are there. When you have this idea, we are telling you to remove that fear. When your idea is credible and you are convinced about it, we create that platform for you to link up with mentors, with angels, investors, and other people that can fund your idea to make it a scalable business. So what we are telling them is remove that barrier of that fear and enshrine that passion for success, and you will get to that place. Thank you.
I do apologize. This really is all we have time for, finishing off with this question. I really do wish we had more time so we could hear more about your thoughts on this question. I really would like to thank Sola Mahoney, Dr. Kiiru, Stephen Kehinde Medase, Yinusa Oyekunle for joining us today and sharing your expertise with us.